Okay, this is our third part of lesson 2.5. This is called Is There a Second Season? And this looks at shows that are on TV, trying to decide whether they should get a second season or not, depending on their ratings. Clearly, if the show's very successful, it stays on. Clearly, if the show's really bad, it does not make a second season. But where's that cutoff point? Where do you decide when something should get a second season and when something should not? All right, let's take a look straight away. So as I'm looking at my data here, this shows us the days in the top 10. So I'm guessing this is for a particular network. And this one is the viewership score. So the higher the viewership score, the more people are actually watching this. So I don't think this necessarily means that 400 people watch the show, but there's some metric that decides what that number is actually worth. So if I was looking at this number here looks like it's about 80 days in the top 10. And it looks like the viewership score is, I don't know, probably around, it's between 500 and 600. I'm going to say 550, but that's not super important at this point. Now, this one does actually go back to these keywords of vocabulary, though. What is the domain and what is the range for this one here? Now, I'm going to click on this little symbol here because I am going to want to type something special in a second. So the smallest value on here appears to be somewhere between, that looks like 25, that looks like 12. It looks like, in theory, we could, of course, have a show that has 0 days in the top 10. So I'm going to include 0 on here, but I know possibly it's a little bit more. Now, if I hit my equal sign, that should be good. And then I'm going to do the same thing for here. So that value actually is that one I said a second ago. It's a little difficult to see the squares on here. 67. I think that's about 90. It is only an estimate. And for questions like this, there's definitely going to be some sort of multiple choice question that goes with this. But for the data that I can see, possibly I don't want to put 0 for this one. That certainly doesn't look like 0. So let me move it up. I don't know for exactly, but I'm going to put about 5. And that's one of the reasons why we have multiple choice options on this question. Now, when you see a question like this, though, one thing they definitely like to do is they like to mix up the answers. So they will often give what the Y values are here, which is actually this next question. So from the range, looks like 0 is very close to the lowest value on here. And it looks like the highest value is just a shade under 600. So I'm going to use that type symbol again. I want to say it's between about 0. This time it's Y, because this is domain. And that top value looks something like, whoops, oh dear. I pressed completely the wrong button there. Let me try one more time. Less than or equal to. There we go. It looks a shade under 600. I'm going to put 590. But once again, it's kind of difficult to tell. But this is one of the things. They would definitely switch this answer with this answer. But they would also do this. For the domain, as this looks like it goes up to, I don't know, about 130. They might say it's between 0 and 130, hoping that you're looking at the values here rather than looking at the values on the graph. And same for range too. They might just say 0 to 850 when we can see that this is not going up to 850 for this question. By adjusting M and B, let's make this a line of best fit. All right, I'm just going to move my picture out of the way just to make sure there's no other dots there. No, there's not. So as I'm looking here, it does look like it goes through 0. So I am going to put 0 as my first value. And then I'm going to start changing the slope so I can kind of get it. Let's have a look. Now, I actually think that I actually want to move this down a little bit. Having said I want 0, I actually think I want it to go there, to go through the middle of these values. And then something like this. Now, the reason I'm trying to do this is this long shape here, you kind of want to slice it right down the middle. So I'm trying to get as many points above the line as below the line here. Now, I might have a few more above than below. So I might want to change this slope again just a little bit more. Or I might just want to move this up just a little touch as well. And this is obviously going to be a little playing around. And we're not going to have an exact answer for this. I think for the purposes of this question, as we're only estimating at this point, I think this is going to be a good enough answer for me. So I got 7.2 and I ended up with negative 30. So I'm quickly trying to type in those two numbers so I don't forget. Given the slope of the model, describe the meaning. What is 7.2? Well, to figure that out, I got to go back to this question. So we look at the change in Y over the change in X. So the viewership score is the top number, and technically the bottom number would be over 1 if this wasn't a fraction. So this is telling me for a viewership score of 7.2, every extra time you get a 7.2 viewership score, it actually stays in the top 10 for 1 extra day. So that's that rate of change that we saw in lesson 2.4 as well. So if I was typing this in, 7.2, the viewership rate per day is what that actually tells us. Now, question 4. If a show has been in the top 10 for 7 days, what do you think the viewership score would be? So this is where we've got to go back to the picture. We've got to try and find 7 on here, which is going to be a little difficult with this one. I probably want to zoom in on this to make this a little easier to see. And then I should be able to see some of the numbers a little bit clearer. But when I can see 5 now, so that's helping. And if I zoom in one more, I should be able to see 7 exactly. There we go. There we go. So if I go up from 7 days, I can click on the line here and just move it until I get it exactly 7, if it'll let me. No, it looks like it's not. Oh, there we go. Exactly. 200. It's a little difficult to see on my screen. 20.4. There we go. And for something like that, you can't really have, I don't know if you can have a score that's a decimal for viewership score. We'll go with 20.4. All right, it says if a series attains a viewership score for at least 60, it would be considered for a renewal. How many days would a series need to be on the top 10 list to be considered for an additional season? So we're looking for viewership score of 60, and this is the first time where we're actually given the Y value, we're trying to find the X value. So let me go back here. Let me zoom out a little bit. So we're not looking for 60 on here because this is days. We're looking for the viewership score of 60. So let me click on here. And so I'm looking for the second number to be 60 this time. So I can get 60.72. Oh, I think I just had it exactly. There we go. So 12.5 days. And then whoever makes this decision is obviously going to have to decide. You obviously can't have 12 and a half days. So it's either 12 or it's 13. 13 obviously would make the cut for sure. And perhaps 12 then is not good enough for this one. And it says, how do you arrive at this answer? You could explain basically what I just did a second ago. That's it for that one. But yeah, you can see the importance of reading the axes when you're doing these questions. And you can see for each of these, once you've created that line of best fit, you can use it to actually answer questions by looking at the prediction that it actually makes.